Prosperity in Black America. What will this require? Is Black business prospering? Are we reaching women and minority-owned businesses? How do we achieve earning parity for wealth for our families? Do our children really have access to education? Will our families have choices for our children? Prison pipelines, mass incarceration, tearing our families apart. A healthcare system not accessible to the masses. The disproportionate termination of Black women from corporate America. When will we actually begin to address what's really at play? How do Black people gain more power to help make these changes? This requires a lot of political will and courage. I'm that provocateur of change. I am Cindi Bright. Welcome to HeartBeat.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to HeartBeat. I am your host, Cindi Bright. Thanks for joining us this evening. I titled the show today to be The Fragility of Accountability. You know, so much to talk about here. Last week, if you followed and caught, we did another follow-up show to what was happening on the Dr. Phil show. We had two guests, Ashley King and Rachel Cargis, that came on along with our co-host Aaron Jones, who had appeared on Dr. Phil's show, and we unpacked a lot of what went on in that show when they went live and what was happening to the women who were speaking out. And then after, I was pretty candid myself on the show that evening because I feel like it's an atrocity what is happening to women who speak out and who are driving progress. If you just look around everything that's going on around us right now, I mean, history is definitely repeating itself. Who'd ever thunk that we'd be sitting here right now with our college campuses all erupted, that the push for social justice, the push for women's rights. And at the center of all of this, around women who have stepped up and who are addressing accountability from the Dr. Phils of the world, from corporations, from other people, other Black people. Black women are at the center of all of this. And so you can see the attacks that are going on with Black women across the country. Now, after that show, I had a lot of comments that got put on some of my social pages, and I was being called names by people, and I removed some of them because some of them are just hateful. People are just so full of rage and hate that I just didn't want that energy on my page. But I continue to say to them to do their homework, do your homework, because the things that we're talking about are not things that we're concocting. Black people are not victims because we are raising issues and pushing for social change. That's not victimization. Victims are kind of the people who are resisting the change that is actually here. You can't undo people's race. You can't undo progress. You can try, but the fact that people still feel that they are entitled to so much when the world has completely changed. I'm not going to call them names on air like how they've called me names and some of our guests. But I'm saying do your homework. Like, begin to learn systemic racism. Begin to understand how these issues of the past are playing into today. Begin to understand institutional racism and how things have been embedded and how folks think and make decisions. This is an important piece to our progress now. Today, we decided to do the show a little bit different. I've got co-host Stephanie Coverson here with me this evening. Let's welcome her in. Stephanie is brilliant, by the way. I continue to advocate for the co-hosts and the women that come on with me, not only pursuing her doctorate, but just brilliant in her thinking and how she is addressing the world and what she aims to change. And what we decided to do today is break down a few things. We want to also talk about the Club Shay Shay, the Shannon Sharp and Amanda Seales podcast. For those of you who have not seen it, open up a bottle of wine, because that's what Stephanie and I did today to be able to have this conversation with you today. because it's so triggering to watch it. But we just wanted to have a conversation about kind of the fragility, the backlash, and what it feels like for us to live in today's world and deal with this on the daily. So, good evening, Stephanie. Thank you for being here with me today. And thank you for suggesting. I'm drinking red today. What are you having?
Having a little white here. I can't even tell you which white I selected because it was just a 911 situation.
Yes, it don't even matter, does it? Doesn't even matter. Cheers to
It does not.
you this evening, and thank you for coming on with me and talking again about these issues. Where do we start? I mean, we can start with like last week and what transpired on the show last week. Kind of what were some of your thoughts about that in hindsight about the show?
You know, I have gotten into the habit of saying I am rarely surprised, but perpetually disappointed, right? So this idea of folks not willing to sit in discomfort, particularly when they feel convicted by some of the conversations that we're having about power, privilege, and inequity. And so, one of the things that I have been grappling with and kind of making a decision to do, um, I'm no longer going to focus my time on begging people to change their minds or engaging in these harmful conversations, in the hopes that someone will say, "Oh, hey, oh my God, Stephanie, you are right." Like, there is a disparity. Instead, I think it's important to focus on the folks who are curious, who are, open to hearing this information and, like you said, willing to do the homework.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think that's where transformation is.
Mm-hmm. I do want to give credit to the people that are, because there are definitely, I've noticed it through the show here, not just what people are saying while we're on air, but the follow up that I get. People are interested and have engaged. I think where a lot of the challenge has started to show itself is kind of what Rachel was experiencing, which is the backlash when you step into this world, right? When you step into this work, it's what people who don't live this life, they don't experience, they haven't seen it before. And so the nastiness and the hate that comes just from speaking, I was saying before we came on air tonight, I was questioning the fragility of this conversation, right? Is it that we're addressing, I'll speak for myself. Is it that I'm using the term white people? Is that so offensive that you feel it's okay to call me a racist because I address white? What do white people prefer to be called? I mean, do they want to be called colonizers? Do they want to be called? I just don't know. I'm just addressing them. Like, I'm not offended to be called a Black woman. So, but it clearly shows me that they don't even understand racism, because they think racism is about using a term as opposed to understanding the system of racism that has kept people out from having access. So I've often described racism is about access and power. And so when you call people racist, it is because they are the folks who are protecting and denying access and power to other people to try to protect so that they have it all. I've been using an example in many of my conversations lately because, as you know, Stephanie, and a lot of people on my Facebook, I just have a new grandson. I'm a new grandma. And I have wondered, when I look at my grandson, whose name is Bo, I'm a biracial woman. My son's father is white. My daughter-in-law is Japanese. She's a mixture of Japanese and Filipino. And so I've got the quad going on here with Bo is Black, white, Japanese, and Filipino. He represents the world now. And so what do you do? How is this world prepared to handle the fact that there's pure white is just almost non-existent because people have merged cultures? And so, and how do we build a world where they are accepted too? Is it that they're afraid that they have to live with the systems that they created for them to benefit? Are they afraid that we're now going to benefit off that system? Is that what's at play?
I think it's a combination. So I want to go back to the first thing. So this idea of being called racist because you use the term white. I think there's absolutely some discomfort around racializing white folks, right? Um, because in whiteness and this whole idea of rugged individualism, like I'm just a person, I'm an American, right? And that I think is the rub, right? So every other group of folks of color, right? So Black American, Asian American, Native American, or Indigenous American, uh, 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 Hispanic American. So all of these different terms, like we're the ones that get the hyphen, right? So like American, though, with the asterisks.
Mhm.
Whereas this idea of whiteness and rugged individualism, um, uh, whiteness affords the privilege of being considered an individual,
Mhm.
right? As opposed to folks who have racialized identities, um, do not have that same privilege.
Mhm. I appreciate you calling out the individualism too. That is the most profound distinction between races, is that the white race has been bred into individualism, whereas the other communities are built into Ubuntu, right? We go together, we share, we work together. Um, and so I guess it is creating this huge level of discomfort with the colonizers because the world has changed. The world has changed. And in fact, there's so much data. I mean, this is more of a conversation, but there's so much data that supports what we're talking about right now, that the voting power in this country here in the next 5 years is completely transformed, right? We will have, uh, I'll just reference, there is a book, I actually have it sitting here because I've
Oh,
used it for my work. It's Brown is the New White by Stephen
yes.
Phillips. And he talks about by 2030, which means we're there now, right? That um, 23% of people of color and 28% of progressive white people become 51% of the voting power in this country. And so the fear now, I say it for business and for the world's changed, and the younger people who they're not going to vote for. I mean, we got to get through this election here this year because if you don't understand power and privilege and everything brown and black people have been talking about, look at the fact of how we can't hold accountable someone who's committed 84 felonies, who is bullying the press, who is intimidating witnesses, like you can't even get him held accountable. And yet he's not, I mean, he's close to 8. He's not going to live much longer either. So um, not being able to control color is simply melanin. It's just something so simple and basic, and yet it has driven nothing but a wedge, a divide. And when they like to say DEI is creating a divide, it's the colonizers that have created the divide because they don't want to share. And so their way of not wanting to share is to divide us, is to say that we're just a bunch of people who didn't earn it. Don't even get me started on the didn't earn it hashtag.
And I think it is a, so I think it's a combination. And I think it is the combination of white maleness and power, right? So we look at, like, many of us have joked that, you know, Barack Obama's like worst thing that he was excoriated for, like the White House scandal, was the tan suit, which I thought he looked very dapper, by the way.
Mhm.
But right, so this idea that this individual could be indicted on 85, 91 charges, and we are really entertaining a conversation at the Supreme Court about whether or not the President of the United States should have
Yes.
absolute immunity. Um, so this is really about, I think, white elitism, uh, the elites, um, and, Harvey Weinstein, like, his conviction for sexual assault was overturned.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just always, I think, a reminder that the legal system is not justice, right?
Mhm.
And I think sometimes we make the mistake of conflating the two. So I
Mhm.
think what tends to happen, you know, is really that white middle class folks, white poor folks, um, receive, I would say, a better, quote, quote, level of legal outcomes.
Mhm.
Um, but people with wealth, right, receive what we're seeing with the Harvey Weinsteins, the
Mhm.
Donald Trumps.
Mhm.
Um, and so I've been thinking a lot of that, and I feel like sometimes this idea of whiteness, particularly when you do not have wealth, is like power on layaway,
Mhm.
right? So if I uphold the system, uh, and they continue to diminish, disparage, and discriminate against these folks over here, that one day, I will be, a part of this elite that sits on the neck of others.
Mhm. Mhm. I appreciate you bringing. I had forgotten about the Harvey Weinstein. That is another. It's another example of the elitist and the lack of being held accountable. Like, what does it take for folks to be held accountable, right? What did you think about, you you asked me to watch the Club Shay Shay conversation, and um, boy, I don't even know where to begin. So first off, it was a lengthy conversation, and listening to Amanda Seals and that conversation with Shannon Sharp. First off, I needed something that wasn't 15% proof. I had to pour something that was 90% proof to watch it because it was so triggering for me. I actually couldn't watch it all in one setting. Um, but the whole notion of, I'm drawing the parallel of lack of accountability and the people who are holding folks accountable, the work of Black women in this space, and not feeling understood or protected. Amanda Seales uses those two words often. She's talking. But what are some of your general thoughts about that conversation that they had before we start diving into that deeper?
Um, it was activating for me as well. Um, I feel like I watched in real time Amanda Seales be diminished,
Mhm.
uh, gaslit,
Mhm.
have her sense and understanding of not the world, but her world, her experiences questioned. Um, I feel like I also witnessed her being shut down. And I think this is, I think going backwards, there's a spot in middle school, I can't remember if it's 5th, 6th, or 7th grade, where girls stop saying that they know the answer. Girls feel pressured not to show their brilliance, not to shine too brightly. And I think that I think we saw how society treats smart women and smart Black women in particular, because how dare you? And now, do I believe and agree with everything that Amanda Seales says? Absolutely not. But I found that interview to be extremely disrespectful, and also kind of this case study that we could witness in real time, how Black women are treated when they're subject matter experts in something.
She had to, which is a common thing that we all do, she had to remind him that she was speaking from a place not just of personal experience or opinion, but actually advanced degree in Black studies, African American studies, and the questions that he was asking her and the tone of which he addressed her was to make her the problem, right? That she was the problem in every situation. And um, I really appreciated how she was describing that this is just me. Like, this is this is how I talk. Like, this is how, because I'm candid, because like I just speak directly. I don't choose to speak in, but to watch the interaction with, you know, Shannon Sharp, I I don't want to disrespect. I mean, he's clearly done some things in his life, and I don't want to diminish his accomplishments. I don't want to diminish his athletic prowess. Uh, but he was talking to an intellectual woman, and he's not intellectual. And so you could just see the difference between that capacity when he was speaking and he was talking to someone like her. And I bring this up and I wanted to talk about this because I feel that that is a constant, like the goalpost for Black women has been set so high. And now that we've achieved and exceeded that, and I'm talking about just in our academics, how do you argue with the fact that women like us who have invested in ourselves, she invested in herself, why do we have to mansplain to them and then get him, like I was just watching that whole dynamic with him trying to just tear her down, and does he even recognize he was doing that to her? I mean, I kind of wondered, because it's such an ingrained behavior with this society on how we talk to Black women, that it was something else. But it reminded me of me. It reminded me of many Black women that I've talked to who've all experienced this exact same thing. And it shows that it doesn't matter which, it's coming from every direction, right? Like, it's white people do that to Black women, Black men and their relationships with us and how they talk to us, um and the fact that they don't defend us or protect us. I mean, it's a generalized statement. I know that's not all Black men, but um what do we as Black women do in a society that, has us constantly um, marginalized and want to put us in our place? Want to put us in our place. That's what he was attempting to do with her. And then when he tried to dab her, did you catch how? I mean, it took everything inside of her, I know, to try to be respectful back to him because she was feeling diminished by him.
So I I find it interesting, right? So this is an area that Amanda Seals has researched and has expertise and experience um, uh, working for Black liberation, as well as educating us or talking to us about some of the systems, nuances, and even historical perspectives that we may not be aware of because we have been subjected to an educational system that was founded to assimilate, uh, deculturate, and commit cultural genocide on Black and Indigenous people, as well as um, Asian Americans and Latinx folks. I mean, it just, whole body of work about it. And I want to take this idea of intellectualism out of it and just say expertise for this reason. Shannon Sharpe is an expert in football, right? He's played it, he knows it, he can have conversations about it, he knows the strategy behind it. And he's an expert in that area. And I wonder how he would feel if a woman, a Black woman who watched a football game or two, interviewed him and tried to argue him to the ground about something that he's an expert in. I don't think that he would take too kindly to it. And I think that he would find it shocking. I think he would find it disrespectful. He may even find it bemusing, because how does one's opinion equate to somebody else's expertise?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's the rub. And I feel like the entire interview was rooted in misogynoir, like just this hatred and discrimination and disdain for Black women.
Mm-hmm. She disclosed in that interview that she is neurodivergent. She has, I think it was autism she was speaking to. And I mean, it's kind of the point that you are raising has several tenets to it. One is like, how come we can't just respect people for who they are? And in this case, understanding if you know, differences in people, being able to recognize it and personally adjust to it, right? Like it's not rocket science. You and I do it professionally, right? You're sitting in a room, you can recognize when there's another dynamic at play with somebody and it doesn't make them inferior. It means that the accountability from the person communicating with that person, they have as much responsibility to learn how to communicate with people who are different than us than expecting people to be like us or to be like whatever they consider to be the normal, right? And so our society is in a place where we expect people to please the person who fits the mold, as opposed to he couldn't meet her where she is. He insisted on tearing her down, even though he probably wouldn't articulate that he did that. It's, it, it's so ingrained in it's the way that he talked to her. He implied that, I can't remember which, she was talking about being terminated from someplace, and he just insisted on making it that she's a problem everywhere she goes. I mean, that was his subtle message. Instead of recognizing that her battle, like he had an opportunity as an expert in football and an audience that he had an opportunity to help change the narrative around the perception of Black women. And instead, he played right into the narrative that were difficult and all the things that we're labeled as, because society can't handle how we communicate and who we are. And yet we're the first people they call when they need anything to be fixed because of our resilience and tenacity and the things that we've had to acquire in order to survive in this society. So I was so disappointed when I I was disappointed in him. Um, in fact, I feel like he owes her an apology. I feel like Shannon Sharp, you owe Amanda an apology for how you handled that interview because you disrespected her in a huge way.
I, I absolutely agree. And, I talk in my consulting practice a lot around decentering whiteness in the workplace. And I think another thing that also needs to be decentered is neuronormativity, right? Uh, there are many ways of seeing the world, experiencing the world, solving problems, um, uh, all of the ways. And I think a Black autistic women uh, miss the social cues. So not just kind of the general social cues, but there are also racialized social cues, right? Make yourself smaller,
Hmm.
make everybody feel comfortable, um, uh, caretake, fawn, sort of all of these things. And Amanda Seales is not doing any of that.
Hmm.
And so I think it is this, then she's being punished, right, for doubling down because she's not accepting that place. Um, accepting that place and doing the small talk and trying to make people feel better about the medicine that it's that this truth that she's speaking, frankly. And also I think that there is internalized racism and misogynoir in our own community.
Hmm.
And so that is a conversation that I feel that a lot of us are not ready to have. And
Hmm.
so now you have Essence Magazine
Hmm.
coming out with an op ed. So, Essence Magazine, the premier Black magazine for women, coming out with an op ed that Amanda Seales is not likable.
Hmm.
Then you have The Root coming out, this online publication that's supposed to be uplifting Black people. Um, also talk about Amanda Seales in this disparaging way. And it's again, sadly not surprising, but perpetually disappointing.
Hmm. I really appreciate what you said, Stephanie, about, um, there's a lot that she said that you don't agree with. Same here, right? Like we don't all have to have a 100% agreement to respect somebody else, right? Like we're humans, and so the human condition is that we have differences. Like we're just, and so to your point about the black media, the black print, the black journalism around narratives has become so disappointing. I mean, it is part of why we do HeartBeat, right? Because we just want to be able to we just want to be able to talk about, like, you and I don't agree on everything. Aaron and I don't agree on everything. Like, it doesn't mean that we're enemies. We just have different perspectives on different things, and collectively, it's powerful. And so, why is it so difficult for society to just accept difference? And that it why is it? And why does people join the bandwagon, to your point about um, essence and like that she's not likable. I think she's very likable. I appreciate her bravery. Like her courage that she has to speak about issues and about truth, um, and we need more of it. I mean, don't you prefer people to just where you know where someone's coming from rather than the traditional, I'm going to talk in code, I'm going to sugarcoat, or I'm going to lie to your face and then backstab you. Like that's what has become normal in society. Not so. I was disappointed in it, and it highlights fragility because she was simply just trying to explain her perspective, her experiences, and they're valid, and they're her experiences. So you can't discount just because you don't like what her experience is. You can't just discount it and then make her the problem. That is the narrative that has to be imploded.
Absolutely. And to your point around whether or not Shannon Sharpe is going to apologize, a couple of days later, he went on another podcast with Ocho Cinco and some dude that I didn't recognize, but they talked about her. And Shannon Sharpe described her as ultra defensive. And, because of the trauma in her life, he doubled down on not uh, discounting her experience and then proceeds to discount her experience because he was just trying to explain that when he was a kid, you didn't talk to your
Mhm.
elders and, blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah,
he doubled down on that talking point. Um, and then Ocho Cinco's question of all of the thing was, is she married?
I know.
Is she married? And so when Shannon Sharpe says no, um, and then the guy in the middle, don't remember his name, uh, when they reference that she was highly intelligent, he says, well, that sounds like some flaws. Then they perceive that the whole conversation devolves into like dude in the middle has 5 women that he runs through. And so it just then went into this disgusting like journey of misogyny um uh and basically, the standard of man that she was looking for was too high. And that's another thing that I find interesting because in other communities, women are allowed to have expectations or sort of a checklist or whatever preference. That's the word that gets thrown around a lot, preference for who they want to date. And one, she specifically did not say that she needed a college educated man. She talked a lot about character, being curious. Like if I'm sad about something and I tell you that I'm sad, your next question should be why, and to be able to have a conversation about it.
Mhm.
But all of that was ignored. And basically, you know, she's defective because she's highly intelligent and her standards are too high.
How many of us single Black women have heard that narrative? I mean, I know I have a lot. When people ask me, "How come you're not married?" Uh, my response is because I'm not, right? Like there's because I'm not, and um, when I heard them do that to her, or when I heard that dialogue and they were saying that, um, again, shame on them for perpetuating the same. Because they had that conversation is why we don't want men like them. Because they felt it okay to sit there and diminish a woman like that for her standards, whatever they want to articulate it. It's why we don't want them, because we don't feel safe around someone who's going to attack us for who we are, because we don't want to be. connected or tied to somebody who's disrespectful, because we don't want to be arm candy or a way for them to brag about whatever, because we are either submitting to them or not. It doesn't mean we aren't feminine. It means we don't want them. And so, because I'm just speaking for myself, to know that I recently had an experience with someone who was trying to date me. And the only thing he would do is talk about other Black women. And he was disrespectful. There was one woman in particular, he had ran her business to me, well-known woman here in the Seattle area. And I sat there looking at him like, why would I ever trust someone like that, who gets mad and runs her business to me? You comfortable enough to share that with me, then you are comfortable enough to tell my business to other people. I want nothing to do with people like that. We have a right to decide where we're safe. And if you go ahead, Jeff.
Safe and respected. And so just hearing like one of them talking about, how they have a rotation of 5 women, like, and, the rest of the conversations that they're having with women that they, I guess, are romantically involved with or in a relationship with, I wouldn't want anything to do with you for the way that you treat women in your life. Like, not just because of your opinions on Amanda Seales, right? That is just further confirmation. But the way that they talked about and disparaged the women in their lives, or one of them was single and talked about how they would treat a woman in their life. No, thank you.
No, thank you. This is about to be a controversial thing I'm going to say, but first off, it's no secret that when I was married, which has been many years ago now, that I was married to a white man. What are Black women supposed to do when we are hated by our own race and disrespected by Black men? Like, are we supposed to live the rest of our lives like having no partners or no love in our life because they don't know how to treat us or won't treat us respectfully? Like, they can say what they want. Let's go back to Shannon, and you can say what you want, but she's an accomplished woman. She's done a lot. She's done more than, as have you, Stephanie, as have I. We've done more than the women that are considered now more this or more that. The lack of maturity from their part, or evolvement, maybe that's the right word, or awakening of life and how, what is it? I guess my question to you is like, what do you think we should do as Black women in this space of, because of dating people and our standards are too high because we want to be respected? I mean, what do we do in that situation? I think many of us have just chosen to stay single because we don't have the energy to deal with them.
Yeah, the first thing that I think is important to recognize is that you go where you're valued, right? And so I'm talking on an individual basis. And go where you're valued, not where you're tolerated, where you feel that you can be your real self and that folks will, the people in your life, not just dating relationships, but, the organizations you choose to work for or affiliate yourselves with, your dating relationships, your friendships. Go where you're valued and celebrated and seen as a phenomenal person. Like, if I can't, hype you up and gas you up and you hype me up and gas me up, I don't want it. right? I want to celebrate your accomplishments, your achievements, your dreams. I want to walk in the valley, with you when you're in hard times, that you're experiencing a hardship, because those seasons don't last, right? But that's a testament to, who's really in your corner when, you know, you're spending time in those valleys.
It makes it tough, though. I don't want to interrupt your train of thought. It makes it tough. Well, then I guess you said, then don't interrupt it. Let me let you just finish your train of thought, and then I'll comment more.
Yeah, one thing is, I think that as a society, we have been socialized, and we also perpetuate this idea that our crowning achievement is being married
Mhm,
and having kids.
mhm,
And that's okay if that's your crowning achievement. I used to say all the time, like, I could find a cure for cancer, and somebody would say, "But are you married? How
mhm,
many kids do you have?"
mhm,
And so in many ways, I feel like we have bought into this idea of this patriarchal society. Like, we are only as good as our ability to be married, have a man, keep a man, have kids.
mhm,
And so I find that problematic. I celebrate the Black men in my life who push back against that. Um, and again, at this juncture in my life, I only want to be in community and conversation with people who are willing to have uh, dialogue, as opposed to whether it's, all this crap online about, Black men versus Black women,
mhm,
the diaspora wars. I'm not interested in that.
mhm,
I'm not interested in these polarizing conversations.
mhm,
I want to have more conversations about uh, where I can hear people's perspective and they will hear mine, without the attacks, and the name calling and all of those kinds of things.
mhm. I appreciate that a lot too. I'm jumping back to Amanda for a minute, but if I articulate for myself, I don't even know where I feel safe. And so, it's very difficult to be a Black woman in this society, to find relationships where you feel safe, where you feel heard and understood and respected. Like it's not a given to us. We can't even finish a sentence without somebody interrupting us when we're talking. So I apologize for that, because it's such a
No, this is a
common.
good conversation.
um, but it's a thing. I was watching. I think we highlighted a few weeks ago on the show when CNN host Laura Coates had to interject and say, "I'm still speaking," in order to be heard. And I was just listening this week to one of the other commentators was trying to get a point out, and she wasn't. They kept interrupting her, and she finally said, "I'm still speaking." But it's this whole notion of how do we find people that um, they know how to respect us. And so with Amanda, it's not that she's too difficult and unlikable. She demands respect. She demands that she be talked to in a way. Remember the comment about, I'm not about to hug somebody who, sits here and um, talks bad about me behind my back, but in public they're doing da 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 da. Like, she's principled and
And
right,
why should we?
right.
Right? And why should we hug people who disrespect us, try to tank our careers, sort of
Mhm.
whatever the thing is? We feel pressured by society, right? This fear of conflict, or will I be seen as the problematic one for not hugging, for not hugging that person? And
Which is
so,
exactly what happened to her,
right.
right?
I love how
Exactly.
she stood on business. Like,
Mhm.
nope.
Nope. So if that means we stay single, then we stay single. Like I'm also at that age where, you got to show up with way more than 2 inches in order for me to even have, right. Like, I mean, because I'm being a little
I
sarcastic,
wasn't ready.
but it's the truth, right? That the men that come at us with, they don't know how to respect a queen. They don't know how to respect a mature, seasoned woman, an educated woman. I mean, I could talk about this forever. It's a whole nother show, Stephanie. But yeah, I didn't mean to say that on air the way I said it, but there's some truth to it, because that's what a lot of men approach us with. I'll speak for myself. They approach you with, they think that that is enough. And an intellectual, educated woman needs a whole lot more than that. And for him to run her down the way he did, I just found to be just so disrespectful. Like, my heart just tore open watching that. And again, I come back to the word fragility, like the folks who just can't handle who we are and want to call us names and diminish us and tell us we're not marryable and we're not good enough and all those things. I reject. And as she does, as you do, we reject those thought processes about us.
Yeah, we have to, particularly in a society that's the narrative, and the message, right? And that doesn't mean that, um, I'm not a work in progress. We're not a work in progress, yada, yada, yada. Um, it saddens me to see the lack of grace
Mm-hmm.
and humanity. I think that was offered to her.
Mm-hmm.
Also, she's, I think, working to disrupt systems, right? So that's also another problem with, racism is a byproduct of capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
right? The reason that this black white binary exists in the United States was to justify the enslavement and theft and forced labor of Black people, right? It was about capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And much of Amanda Seal's work challenges the entire system, like not just racism, but the patriarchy, white supremacy culture. Like, she is seeking liberation.
Mm-hmm.
And that can also be problematic for, I think about, for example, Hollywood elites,
Mm-hmm.
right, who have navigated that system and played the games
Mm-hmm.
required to get there. And I'm sure that folks find that uncomfortable. Like, what if I lose my roles, my jobs,
Mm-hmm.
my connections? There's a book out by this man who talks about how he lost a lot of friends when he started vocalizing his stance on being anti-racist, speaking out
I saw
specifically
that.
on anti-Black racism. He lost a lot of friends.
Is that the TikTok that you had shared with me where, yeah, I saw
I
that
think it was
where,
maybe another. This is,
okay,
I don't think I saw his book on TikTok. I did order it
okay,
though, so I'm waiting for it to come in.
okay. I saw the TikTok. I think it was you, maybe Aaron might have sent it to me, but it was the white man who was standing up, like he was calling out and he was explaining the cost he's having to pay for that. And that is what Rachel last week was talking about. It's what Amanda's dealing with. It's what you and I deal with. There's a cost to being vocal and being Black.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
I really appreciate having this conversation today, Stephanie, because we have to talk about. We got to talk about it. Um, it is a significant issue in our society with Black women and how Black women are treated. Um, It is an issue. I was gonna also talk about the whole Drew Barrymore, Vice President Harris.
I was gonna ask when we were gonna get to Mamala, like, despite
Well,
all
let's
this
talk about it.
woman's qualifications,
Yeah. What did you
like,
think about? I was trying to discern some of that. What did you think about that interaction?
okay, I like I like Drew Barrymore, so let me just start there. I like Drew Barrymore. And Drew Barrymore, this is something that she got dead ass wrong. Dead ass wrong. And so it so again, all of the work, brilliance, strategy, uh knowledge, sort of all of these different things that Kamala Harris uh has. America needs a hug. And so it just really felt like it really felt like we fell face first into the mammy trope, right? So it's our job to make everybody feel good, particularly about a situation or situations, let's be clear, that as Black women, as Black people, we didn't build, right? So Donald Trump is not, and the folks that are, running around uh, co-signing for everything that he's done. We didn't build that. We didn't build that. We the police brutality, and let's be clear about what's happening on these college campuses. These students are being physically assaulted and attacked by the police because they are pushing back against, in essence, capitalism. Like, these expectations to divest from Israel, or the demands to divest from Israel, boycotting, interrupting these college campuses, funding sources, to see peaceful protesters shot with rubber bullets, dragged with their faces on the concrete, sort of all of these things. This behavior is the same type of behavior, right, that we saw, the behavior by police is the same behavior that we saw in the Black Lives Matter protest, right? And so racism comes second to capitalism. And so in this instance that we're seeing across campus, racism, or being the beneficiaries, right, of racism as white and white passing or white presenting students, the privilege of skin color did not save them from the brutal response to that. So to expect Kamala to give everybody a big hug, would we be asking for Papa Joe? Papa Joe, we need you. The world needs you to act like a grandfather and read us a story and give us a hug and give us a Werther's candy to make it all better.
I observed the vice presidents when Drew Barrymore reached over and grabbed her hands, and she's the vice president, so she can't say what was running through her mind, but I know she had to feel something when that was said to her, because it didn't. I mean, I just think Drew missed the mark, right? Like, it's not our responsibility. It's what continues to happen, right? It is the Black woman's responsibility to fix everything, but we can't even garner respect in the process of doing that. And so, I'm hopeful she is our next president. Granted, I know we have to get through this election cycle, but I just had compassion for being put in that position that she was in, because she can't say what she truly felt. And then to your point about all of the protests and everything that's happening, that the disruption of this system, history is repeating itself. And so it requires what's happening right now. It requires it. We won't change it by just continuing to smile and be what Shannon Sharp wants us to be. It takes us to make sure that things are different for the next generation behind us, right? It just requires us to disrupt it. Disrupt it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to add the expectation to fix everything and mollycoddle and hug and make people feel good
Mm-hmm.
while we do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And again, this, this idea of, the public policies, the global policies and agendas are created by our elected officials,
Yep.
right? So none of this happened in a vacuum. And I think that all of this provides us an opportunity to look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but to reflect on if people would have taken us seriously when we were marching in the streets around Black Lives Matter about, getting rid of police having qualified immunity, requiring them to carry insurance, the no hire list, like so that you can't go from police department to police department
Mm-hmm.
raining your terror, and
Mm-hmm.
as well as the anti-militarism platform that we talked about as well, like had those things been implemented, had people listened then, these students, would not be being attacked.
Yep.
Um, I would like to think that there would be a different outcome than the apartheid state that we're witnessing currently. Um, so it makes me sad, and it also makes me really angry, and minimizing Vice President Kamala Harris's position, her work, her expertise.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't. I like Drew Barrymore, but that didn't sit right with me.
I think it hit a lot of people that way. Stephanie, I appreciate you again, as always, my brilliant sister, being on here with me tonight. We're going to dive heavier into politics again next week. So I appreciate this conversation today. I love you, girl. I just love
I
having
love you too, sis.
you. It's so awesome. To our audience who joined us tonight, thank you for participating in this conversation with us. As you just heard me say, we're going to jump back into politics next week. We're going to talk next week. We've got two guests coming on. They're both running for the office of public superintendent here in Washington State. So we're going to get to hear from them. And then we are going to continue some of the dialogue you heard Dr. Coverson talking about today. And we're getting close to the filing deadline for the local offices. So we're going to be digging more into people who are first-time runners and starting to see what the candidate pool looks like. So thank you all for joining us this evening. HeartBeat loves you and appreciates you. We look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good week.
Half that up in sacks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black.